Hakeem, what have you seen? What do you think we need to do to have not just regulatory institutional, but cross-industry strategic partnership to bring in new products, new services?
For a Nigerian stock exchange with a market cap of close to 12 trillion naira at the moment, there's still a lot more that we could do to actually enhance trading on our floors. And a key part of that is financial literacy, which is why I think the Financial Literacy Technical Committee of the SEC, which was set up to implement the master plan, is actually something everybody should key into. And why have I said that? The FLTC, as it's set up, is already trying to even think beyond today and trying to plan against the next few years by inculcating capital markets training into the curriculum of both secondary school and the university students. Now, what will this do? Today, I mean, we are still saying some people are using our apps, but we are having fintechs trying to come up with different ways of trading on the stock exchange. Most of our retail investors today do not know how to use those systems. Most of the kids today that are just getting out of university do not have a lot of knowledge about the capital markets. And we've seen a decimation of the retail play in the last 10 years. The only way we can bring this back is to encourage people to understand what the capital market is all about and to allow them to be open to the new technologies that will be coming in. We know what we have today. We don't know what's going to come up tomorrow. We need to have a proper system of educating our youths in a way that they will be open-minded and they will absorb whichever technology comes tomorrow. Having said that, another key area that I think we need to be conscious of to enhance investment in the market is the utilization of the CIS, of the collective investment schemes. Now, a lot of investors think that the only way they can invest is to buy the stock of First Bank, Stanbic, and any of these listed entities. But hey, that may just not be the way. The stock exchange has ETFs listed, but we are not seeing so much volume going through. That is because people are not aware of the possibilities of actually investing in the market through an exchange-traded fund or through any of the mutual funds that are regulated by the SEC. So I will just say that enhancing financial literacy, both for the current investors and also the millennials that we have, and the incoming youths that we are seeing in the universities and secondary school is critical. We should support the SEC and the FLTC to actually allow investors, to actually allow our syllabus to be, have capital market structures. We should have investors and senior investors to actually go to the universities and teach students what they need to know about the capital markets. I think this is going to be very, very important and to allow us to shape the way of our market in the next few years.
Dr. Olayinka, she's a member of the Governing Council of FinTech. So I'm sure this is what you look, think, work, and sleep with on a daily basis. So when you look at the industry and with the works you're doing at the Lagos Business School, what strategic partnerships do you think we can further develop to get a wider education for financial inclusion, whether for startups, whether for companies who want to raise capital, whether those who want to develop new applications or whatever? What's your contribution here?
When we talk about financial inclusion, we're talking about reaching the underserved or the underbanked. So let's put some numbers into context here. We have 100 million adult Nigerians, of which about the last World Bank figures released this year says we're about 40% included. And while we want to think about these solutions, we need to think about how do we go down market? Because this thing, Lanre said this, it's about volume and value, right? How do we go down market? We're trading with, if we're thinking about apps, we're only talking about 25% of the mobile penetration. So we need to think critically about how do we go down market. We need the rules in terms of the regulatory structures and the right rules and the environment to play in. We need the rails, the infrastructure, both the telecom infrastructure as well as the financial services infrastructure. Because not everybody is going to use an app. People are going to want to use different means and channels of accessing financial services. So we need to think broad. In this context, when we're talking about collaboration, this is not a winner-takes-all market or a winner-takes-all business. It's really about how do we bring an ecosystem together, build linkages, and build cooperative relationships where we can co-compete in the same environment. So we need to, rather than just taking the approach of a supply side approach, which has been what we dominantly do. We know what we want in Lagos, and we believe that everyone should buy into what we feel is right. We need to backtrack a little bit and ask ourselves, why should somebody want to trade with First Bank shares when they can trade anywhere else in the world? They're looking for a return. How do we ensure that that person gets the return they want when they want it, so that 1,000 naira that they're investing over years can become something? How do we communicate that in a language that they understand? Because this thing is not about, oh, you can make so much in so many years or whatever. It's really about how do you take that message to them, whether it's in their local dialect or their language or anything like that. So I think we need to understand and contextualize what we're putting in place in Nigeria here, that there are technologies that are abundant, but how do we ensure that the technologies are fit for purpose for the Nigerians that we have in country? They're not going to be educated overnight. They're going to be educated over time. And this is about, we will have the early adopters, we would have the ones that would mature into the technology, but we need to capture everybody. Thank you.
I think and just like Dr. David West said, I think we need to calibrate ourselves when we talk about these objectives. The market is big, like she said, it's 100 million adults strong. The market is not particularly highly educated or technology literate. So if you take the first step, like you said, in onboarding people at the level of their literacy, then you start to include a lot more. Now, what we found is that in the marketplace, when you're trying to change behavior, you must be ready to play a long tail game, first of all. You mustn't think it's going to happen overnight. That's the first thing. You must be willing to do a lot of the grit and grunt work for these people. Our experience has shown us that when you're trying to improve outcomes for a particular segment of people in the marketplace, you may need to actually do the hard work for them in the first few months in order to buy them over into seeing the value of what you're proposing to them. So if we're looking at it from inclusion for the Nigerian Stock Exchange and the capital markets and the entire populace, we need to start looking at how we can stepwise create layers into getting these inclusion happening. If we're going to start approaching it from a voice perspective, which is what you said, you probably had a brainwave, but you don't know how critical what you said is. In a market like Nigeria and in most of Africa, voice is probably the strongest channel that we can use to drive inclusion. It's unfortunate, but many of the tech companies here are building for people who are not excluded. If we're really going to try to attract those people who we feel, maybe who sell in the marketplace and are not that literate to read and write, we need to start reaching them with interfaces that they understand. Voice, local language dialect, pidgin English, simple touch. 1 button touch, 2 button touch, and then you start to see some level of acceptance of technology. Now, when you start seeing a level of acceptance, you can then grow them gradually on multiple steps into a more complex interface or touch point or channel. So, that's the experience we've had. So just to summarize, we need to calibrate in multiple steps, start from the simple, easy, and then grow them into the more complex. Secondly, we need to also realize that it's not an overnight trip. It's going to take training, it's going to take onboarding, it's going to take hand-holding. And eventually, we will start to see the results.